Hello world, last time Melody in Argentina kicked off our show, but this time we're on my own side of the ocean. Welcome to Cameroon, Central Africa. And this is Team Harmony's hit. What are you going to do?
Cameroon? When's the last time you talked to somebody from Cameroon? Heck, most of my friends don't even know where it is. But that's our job. So we're going to show you where it is with our official Team Harmony Where is Cameroon map.
And that's where Eric is, right in the middle of Africa, just above the equator, where it's probably a lot hotter than where we are today, here in wicked cold Massachusetts at the Team Harmony studios. And by the way, I'm Kahari.
And I'm Angel. It is so good to be back after being away for a month. Now, if you missed our last show, you missed our episode on LGBTQ rights, teaching kids in rural China, and indigenous street art in Denver, Colorado.
And I'm still Ellie. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, you can still check them out at our website at teamharmonyfoundation.org.
This month, most of our stories will focus on civil rights and equality. We'll tackle issues like microaggressions, stereotyping, and discrimination.
But we're going to start things off today in Alexandria, Egypt, where Yasmin explains what microaggressions are and how they affect our societies.
Today, I will be having the delight to interview one of the most professional psychoanalysts in Egypt, Dr. Dina Hassan. Hi, Dina. From your professional point of view, what is microaggression?
I think microaggression depends on the person receiving it. So microaggression is really any kind of aggression that is very subtle. It's not enough for other people to notice it, but enough for you to notice it. So it's more like a comment or a backhanded compliment or something that makes the person in front of me feel uncomfortable, not enough for other people to notice that it's a bad thing.
And does it impact us as individuals only, or does it have an impact on the society as well?
I think it absolutely impacts both, because it impacts me as a person, because I'll get offended or upset, but I won't be able to say anything because society tells me that this is not so bad. So I think the major problem with microaggression is that when someone does speak up and says, hey, this bothered me, this really isn't okay, you'll find so many people coming in and saying, by the way, this was just a joke, like chill, like don't be so dramatic. And I think that's essentially the problem with microaggression. It's that it's always overlooked and then people keep doing it.
And how should we address it as a society to solve it?
It starts in the teens, because that's really the age where people are told that they're being very dramatic and they should get over things, and that the adults know that it's not so bad. So I think the thing that we can start with is to acknowledge how people feel, because if I can acknowledge how someone else feels, I'll help them be able to acknowledge how they feel, which I know is counterintuitive because you should know how you feel, but it's actually quite helpful to do this in teens, because if you tell them that it's okay to express how you feel, they then grow up knowing that it's okay, and then they can just say, hey, you know what, this bothered me, you shouldn't be saying that to me.
And to finalize this, what is your advice to teenagers who suffer from microaggression?
If you feel it, then it's there. Just because someone else tells you it's not there doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Because if you feel offended, that means that your body reacted to it, and so did your brain produced all the chemicals for you to be upset. You did the work, so own those feelings.
Thank you so much, Dina, for this helpful talk, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Oh, you're so skinny, you're so small, you're so thin, you look like a model. Do you eat your food or someone else eats your food? All of these backhanded comments, all of these compliments really hurted me. They made me insecure about my looks, my body. I didn't want to buy any clothes. I didn't want to have photos of myself. I used to think that I'm not good enough. I don't look beautiful enough for the community or the standards that that community put. I always suffered from these microaggressions, and microaggression hits you on another level that makes you feel that you're very vulnerable, you're not worthy of the standards of the community, you're not beautiful. So I thought that after all of these years, after I have overcame my incidents with microaggression, that I should own up, I should know who I am, and I should always think that I'm better, I'm the best, and no one should set me down because of a compliment he thinks that will make me happy. That's my story. I'm Yasmin Ahmed, Team Harmony's reporter from Egypt.
Nice job, Yasmin. Now let's meet a woman who actually educates her haters through comedy.
So what I've done is I've created a highly scientific taxonomy of haters. I basically took all of the haters, I put them in a petri dish like a scientist, and this is what I found. First off, we have the trolls. These are your garden variety digital haters. They're the people who have quit their jobs so that they can post on YouTube videos all day long. There's also the drive-by haters. Now, these people will be at a stoplight, they'll wait for the light to turn green, and when it does, they yell, "Go back to your own country." Now, back in the day, they would have actually gotten out of their cars and hated you to your face, but they just don't make them like they used to, which is another sign of the decline in America.
So take us through your path here. How did you get into social justice comedy?
I did a lot of jobs where it was like, you know, I need you to write like 22 jokes about Zac Efron's abs, like by 1 p.m. You know, I've done a lot of those jobs where like the material is not important or anything like that. It's just pure entertainment. But I also wanted to be able to do work that was like meaningful to me, that really brought in some of the stuff that I was doing as a, you know, in public policy and as a public servant, and bringing light to certain policies. So I started making those kinds of videos where I would try to raise attention towards issues like big banks, healthcare, obviously immigrant rights, Islamophobia. Those became really big issues for me, and a way for me to kind of nourish your soul with writing jokes about, you know, big banks and bigotry.
So how do you use your comedy to break down stereotypes?
I try to have it feel like, you know, you're kind of sitting inside of like a warm burrito. Like you're getting like the cheese and all the gooey good stuff or whatever, but you're getting like a bit of protein and some of your, you know, some of your shredded chicken as well. And that shredded chicken is the, you know, where you might learn something super accidentally. You might learn a little something about the Muslim ban. And how it might be unconstitutional, or about women's reproductive rights, you know, but then the exterior shell is very comedy focused and fun.
So you talk about this burrito. How does this burrito, what about it makes it so effective in breaking down these stereotypes?
Comedy kind of has a power of like getting itself in your brain a little bit easier, which makes sense because it's fun and you're just more likely to remember things that are more fun and more inviting.
And again, with all jokes, you'll have those who love the jokes and those who maybe don't like the jokes so much. Have you ever had a hostile experience, and how do you deal with those hostile experiences?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I have had a lot of hostile experiences. I mean, I'm an Iranian American Muslim female, so at some point I'm just asking for it. You have to pick your battles, you know what I mean? And you have to, there's a group of people that are just never going to be moved by whatever it is you're telling them. They are not the ones that you should target. It's the other ones. The people that just don't have enough exposure to Muslims, or the people that don't have enough exposure to people of color. Those are the people that are like probably fundamentally good, and they'll be into what you're saying and what you're doing. And then there's people that are just way more on the fringe, and they're not really worth your time.
So what can we, the Team Harmony staff and Team Harmony reporters, take from your comedy and your burrito methodology, as you called it, to help fight racism in our own lives?
If you see something going on that's wrong, you are actually powerful enough within our local institutions, within our systems, to be able to do something about it. I never thought I was going to have to defend my right to put up posters, but here I was, and I had to do it, and it worked out. And so I think that, you know, if you see something in your community that isn't right, you have the power. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it doesn't take forever, but you definitely have the power to do something.
Now, Nagin, how can the younger generation flip the script on racism?
Exposure is really the key. Like, I always joke, I would love for every American to have a Muslim friend, but we're like less than 2% of the population, so we can't be everyone. Like, I'll take like 10 if I have to, just to like even out the numbers, but it still doesn't work out. But that's really the thing, is exposure. I mean, my parents, I married a black man, and you know, my parents are Iranian immigrants, and they weren't necessarily like super cool at first with me marrying a black man, but then they met him and then they love him. And then, you know, my mom went from being like, via black guy to like Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? She was able to like do that. And I'm serious. Like, she really is out there fighting for Black Lives Matter because she has a son-in-law who's black, who she loves, right? And that's, I think, what am I saying? Date someone from the opposite race? Is that what I'm saying? Not exactly. But what I am saying is exposure, meet people from the other side of the tracks, meet people from the other side of town. We have sort of like gone into these silos on the internet. We've gone into these silos in our neighborhoods where we don't necessarily connect with everybody. And that's a mistake, because that's where that kind of connection with people who you may not normally interact with, that's where the good stuff is. And I think that's where change is really possible.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. This was an awesome experience. And thank you so much for your wisdom as well. That's the most important part.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Remember Cameroon? Well, a couple of countries to the left is Ghana, and that's where we find our global youth reporter Joseph examining the daily challenges of life as an ex-convict in their country.
For many years, Ghana's law courts have determined the fate of people who are convicted of crimes. But what happens to these people after serving their terms in prison is virtually unknown to many. I set out to meet with Michael Achampong, an ex-convict turned preacher, who served 7 years at the Nsawam Maximum Security Prison. He tells me the story about his life, why he was imprisoned, and how he copes with society as an ex-convict.
My name is Michael, and I was born and raised in Medina Firestone in Accra. I had my senior secondary education in Accra Academy, and it's there that my life became miserable and shameful, even though I was a very smart boy in school. But the devil made me into a foolish man in my final year at school, and that's when things started to go wrong. I was convicted when I was 33. Stealing. The situation in prison was absolutely horrible. Just imagine 50 people sleeping in one single room. When I got out, my family had given up on me. They rejected me because they felt like I was a threat to them. My younger brothers and sisters, though, wanted to be close to me, but it was my dad who prevented me from coming back into the family. I can remember going to my aunt's house and I could see her car parked in the driveway, but the driver told me she wasn't there. This happened twice, and I'm not going back again. I had to sleep in public transport minibuses for almost 11 months. Eventually, I met someone who found me a small apartment, and that's where I am now. When I started preaching on the streets, sometimes I'd mention that I was an ex-con. But when I did, people became concerned, and they'd hold on tightly to whatever bags they were carrying. They were afraid.
Michael, who has few months left, according to his doctors, could have been comforted by the warmth of his family, but for the stigma that hangs over his status, this remains a far-fetched wish. Reporting for Team Harmony, my name is Joseph Amwapata from Accra, Ghana.
If you remember in last month's show, we talked to one of our reporters from Pakistan about her story. This month, it's Joseph's turn. Joseph, how did you choose this story?
There are so many people on the streets of Ghana who actually beg, and from little interactions, you can easily identify that these people are homeless people who have been rejected by their families because they have actually been to prison before. And I found out that this is something that the Ghanaian as a person or the Ghanaian society does not talk about. And I decided to talk about it because these people also deserve to be heard.
How did you find your interviewee and arrange for the interview?
So I picked the bus at the local bus terminal in Accra one day, and this gentleman who identifies himself as a preacher walked into the vehicle and spoke about his story. And I realized that he was an ex-convict and trying to use his past to preach like the good message to people to repent and all of that. So I actually decided to trace him down, and unluckily for me, I realized he didn't have a phone, so it took me 5 days to meet him. And that is how we sat down, and then he shared his story willingly with me.
What surprised you about his story?
Most of the time we classify people who've been to prison to be people who are daft and who are, not brilliant. But this gentleman is actually very, very brilliant, and he claims that he was once the top student in his high school, and he mentioned some popular people in the Ghanaian society who he was in high school with, and I could actually attest to that fact. And that was extremely surprising because I least expected to find someone of such high, intellect to find himself in such a precarious situation.
Is the stigma of being an ex-convict in Ghana a problem? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, stigmatization is actually a big problem when it comes to ex-convicts. And a study done by the University of Ghana reveals that stigmatization or rejection by the society of ex-convicts leads to anger, strain, low self-esteem, and lack of self-control. And this also leads to ex-convicts trying to seek support from illegitimate sources by developing criminal characters that leads them into re-offending behaviors. And this is what contributes to the high rate of recidivism that we have in the Ghanaian society.
In your research, did you come across any organizations that are trying to reintegrate ex-convicts into society?
Yes, I came across an organization that calls itself the Crime Check Foundation, CCF, and their main focus is to advocate for crime prevention, but they also pay a lot of attention to reintegrating ex-convicts back into the Ghanaian society. And this organization is being heavily supported by Ghanaian football star and Newcastle player Christian Achu. And with his support, they have been able to provide livelihood support for ex-convicts, such as getting them back to school, helping those who want to become entrepreneurs and those who want to gain some skills and training so that they will be able to reintegrate successfully into the Ghanaian society.
Joseph, big thank you for everything that you do and for giving us some of your time today.
Thank you very much, Team Harmony, for this opportunity.
Going back to Egypt, now we find Noor as she interviews a project manager from a group called Break It Down, an organization fighting stereotypes and hate crimes in Cairo.
Hi, I'm Noor Salah, reporting from Cairo, Egypt, and today I'm going to be covering an initiative called Break It Down. Break It Down are trying to break down all the stereotypes here in Egypt, and they are trying to fight all kinds of hate crimes. I want you all to welcome Heba. She's the project manager of Break It Down. I want to start with the first question. Who started Break It Down, and why did you think of starting Break It Down?
Welcome, Nuran. Mainly, our initiative started 1 year ago based on a great problem happened in Egypt, that a lot of nationalities live in the same place and they have a lot of differences. So stereotyping started between them, and they can't accept each other. They can't follow the same instructions and the same rule. So we have to do something. We have to publish awareness about accepting each other. So we started our initiative.
Egypt is a country of 7,000 years old culture. There is an old saying that says if you drink from the Nile River once, you'll be charmed and you will definitely get back to Egypt again. We're the ones who invented makeup, calendars, clocks, toothpaste, mummification, and even writing. The population of Egypt is 100 million people, and the people living on the Egyptian lands from many different countries are way more than that. 90% of the population are Muslims, and 9% are Christians, and the rest are Jews. With all of that, hate crimes and racism are a usual news headline in Egypt. Discrimination against color, Race and religion appeared aggressively against immigrants lately.
How do you think that Break It Down is breaking down stereotypes?
Mainly, we choose to start with children to be able to create a generation able to accept the differences and able to accept different mindsets. So we start with them with the definition of peace, types of peace, and dialogue, finally conflict resolution.
Spreading awareness is not an option anymore. Diversity and inclusion has to be learned and planted in the minds of the new generations so we wouldn't face the same hate over and over again.
When you started the initiative, did you have any pushing back from your surroundings or your families or anyone?
At first, we thought that we will find a lot of problems, but actually we find a lot of support because a lot of people here in Egypt suffered from stereotyping and they want someone to stop this and publish awareness about accepting different nationalities, different mindsets, colors, nationalities.
I see. I'm very happy that such an initiative exists in real life, and I'm very happy to have you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noor. Nice job. This month, we asked our reporters worldwide, what's the biggest equality issue in your country?
In Portugal, besides our gender inequality problem, we have a big disparity between the rich and the poor.
One of the biggest equality issues facing my country in Egypt is still between men and women.
As it is for Panama, I would say the equality in the education system.
Currently, the biggest equality issue in Poland is women's rights and LGBTQ+ rights.
India has been a predominantly patriarchal society for the longest time, and we have been facing gender inequality issues.
I believe the biggest equality issue in my country is equality in education.
The biggest equality issue in my country is gender inequality and violence against women.
The biggest equality issue in my country is disrespecting women's rights and their abilities.
One of the biggest equality issues in Austria are the gender pay gap and social and racial discrimination in the workplace.
Let's turn our attention to Poland now, where Joanna talks to a teenager whose family started anti-discrimination workshops in schools that led to a campaign.
Hi, I'm Jana Brzezinska from Poland, reporting for Team Harmony. As almost 97% of Poland's population is ethnic Poles, Poles are not accustomed to people of color. Today I'm talking to Elena and Volisa, whose family was unfortunate to experience racism, however, they turned it into something powerful. Could you tell me something about yourself?
I have 3 siblings, and my stepdad is from Nigeria. So my siblings are of color. We have a foundation, and we fight against racism and discrimination in Poland.
Do you consider racism in Poland a big issue?
People think that Poland is this tolerant, accepting country, but there's a lot of verbal racism, like on the streets, people get called out, and yeah, it's on the internet too. So I think it is.
Have any of your relatives or friends experienced racism in Poland? How did it affect them?
It started like 2 years ago. My youngest brother, he was 7. He was bullied at school for his skin color. The school didn't really take any action. So my parents decided that we have to do something about it. We had this idea to start anti-discrimination workshops in schools. We were sharing our story. We gathered a group, and as a family we sat down and started making banners. Someone took a picture of my sister when she was crossing the street with her banner, which is this. It's her banner, which means stop calling me Murzin, and it's like the N-word in English. And people don't find this word offensive. So it's like they use it normally, but on the streets, people get called out. It's as an insult. So we tried to change that. And my sister got invited to be on the cover of Vogue. Thanks to that picture, it changed a lot. Like there were discussions everywhere about that word.
Do you think that Black Lives Matter protests in Poland make Poles more aware and tolerant?
I think that if not that picture, that was taken, it wouldn't change much. People were really kind of defending this word because people find it beautiful and they don't see how it's offensive. But it doesn't offend them because it's not like for them to use.
Could you tell me more about your family's foundation, Porta, and its mission?
Our main mission is education and spreading awareness. And another mission is also like spreading awareness in media. We were on the TV like many times already. The main mechanism of racism is dehumanization. And if we share our story of my family, then people see them as people. It really shows them that they're hurting someone, actually, not just a group.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
That was an inspirational story. Thanks, Joanna. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce another incredibly popular comedian who's not afraid to address racism through humor in his routines.
People just walk around looking for any ridiculous reason to be mad. You know, right now, there's an actual controversy over the Little Mermaid. Have you heard about this? Have you heard they cast a black girl to play Ariel in the Little Mermaid, and a bunch of racists got mad saying our mermaid is supposed to be white. And nobody had the heart to tell them, like, mermaids aren't real. I'm sure if you found a white mermaid, she'd be okay with a black mermaid. Because that would be the only other mermaid, you know what I mean?
So comedians tend to see things differently, right? Why is that important?
Comics have a way of just cutting through the BS and giving it to you straight. I think simply telling the truth, people like, oh yeah, you're right, you know. So I think those are the things that make it funny.
So how have you overcome racism and discrimination in both your career and in life?
Racism is tiring. I'll tell you that first of all. I hate the fact that we are now battling the same battles that my parents fought in the 60s, you know, voting rights and so forth. And to look at the discrimination against various other groups. As a comedian, the battle is to point out the hypocrisy. You know, there are white people who hate immigrants. You're all immigrants. Every one of you. You just came sooner. I tell them, listen, all you did, you beat the Mexicans here by about 100 years. As a black person in America, it's a unique history that we have. We love our country. Our country oftentimes hates us, but we will not go away. We excel. You have to keep going. You can't give in to the racists. There are times when you may be hit with discrimination and you don't even know it. You know, that happens. It's part of the game. You can't give up because of it. You can call it out when you see it. The other thing that uniquely comics can do is we make fun of it. You know, we make fun of the racists and we make fun of every group. The crowd knows when you do a joke. If I do a joke about gays, they know it's a joke. But if you're truly homophobic and you do a joke about gays, there's a certain meanness to it. And the crowd picks up on that. And then they're like, nah, that's not cool. And the same thing with any group, whether it be, you know, women or black or Mexican or whatever. And you can always make more fun of your own group than other groups.
So in your career, have you ever felt threatened and how did you handle it?
I don't count the internet. You know, internet trolls, for the most part, are cowards and not to be given any respect. I think we give them too much power. But the masses of the angry commenters online, they're cowards.
My last question is, how can our global youth reporters use humor as a tool to stand up to hate?
We laugh at our differences. I have traveled the world. I've been lucky enough to do comedy just about everywhere in the world that people speak English. And I've done comedy in the midst of other cultures. And you'd be surprised how much more we are alike than different. A 7-year-old kid running through a flock of pigeons happens in every culture because people are the same. Every parent, I don't care if you're, you know, black, white, Middle Eastern, Asian, your teenagers are a problem. Humor cuts through all of these stereotypes. Humor cuts through hatred because we point out how ridiculous it is. That's how humor battles hatred. You make the hater look as stupid as possible. You make the racist look utterly ridiculous. We're so much more alike than different. And when you're a comic, you get to make fun of this, and you get to make fun of the obvious difference. I was in Ireland. I was at Kilkenny Comedy Festival in Ireland, and I joked about being black in Ireland. And I was like, I saw another black guy, and he thought I was on the team too. And they all laughed because, Ireland is a very white place. I talked about how pale they were, and you could actually see their organs when the sun shines through them from the back. And they laugh because they're like, yeah, we are pale. We are up on this, cloudy green island in the North Atlantic, right? So you get that. And then I was in Cape Town, South Africa, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of white people here. I thought you got rid of them. And they laughed because that's a joke about the history of apartheid, and it's not dismissing it, it's acknowledging it.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Keep your sense of humor and don't take everything personally. Don't take everything personally. I mean, you're 5 feet tall. You have to keep a sense of humor because you're only 4 inches taller than someone who could bring me good luck. You're only 4 inches away from bringing good luck. See, and you have to laugh at stuff like that because too many in our society are looking to be injured, looking to be upset. When they talk about that cancel culture, they try to use it as a cover for saying horrible things and doing horrible things. Keep your sense of humor. Take the hit, laugh, and keep going. There's nothing that frustrates them more than you laughing. There's nothing when they hate you and you're laughing at them. Oh, that makes them mad, So keep that. And would you stop asking me for life advice? The hell do I know?
We're done. I won't ask you anymore, I promise. Thank you for everything, Alonso.
Thank you. I love being a part of it. Hit me up anytime. I'll be glad to help.
Our last story comes from the southern part of Egypt, in Aswan. Maria introduces us to Egyptian youth who volunteered to help clean up following a devastating explosion in Beirut, Lebanon.
4th of August 2020. A great explosion happened in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, causing a huge destruction all around the capital. Today, I'm interviewing someone telling us about his efforts to help Lebanon citizens overcome this catastrophe.
And today I have with me Mahmoud Abdelmegid, the founder of Have a Dream Foundation, that provide opportunities to Egyptian citizens to volunteer and help anybody in need around the world. How Have a Dream Foundation helped Lebanons by volunteering after the explosion?
After the explosion, I feel like it's a big responsibility. I really feel that I wanted to be there to help the people in Lebanon. I get a lot of messages from people asking for help. So I booked my ticket. I went to Lebanon, and I was really very worried about that because the media is showing all the time that Lebanon is not safe and there is a lot of demonstration. People are in the streets. If you will not be safe if you go there. So I was a little bit afraid, but I went with the volunteers in Lebanon to the apartments, buildings, to the streets, just doing one thing. We are cleaning the homes from the glasses because there is a lot of glass everywhere. It's a huge explosion. It's one of the third explosion in the world after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We offering just help. Like we come just to help you. The first step that we spend all August cleaning the homes, making something like conservation. And then we start two things. Business assessment to the small and medium and big shops or restaurants, whatever, to know like how can we help them. The third thing was there is a team for social support. They was going to the old people in their homes or their apartments, just to talk to them, just to help them to be back again to the normal life. And then we start in Have a Dream to organize a program for Egyptians to go to Lebanon. 50 volunteers traveled with us in 3 months. It was really something huge. I didn't expect that before traveling to Lebanon, but now I feel that I'm really happy that 50 people, they pay for the ticket, for accommodation, food, they pay for everything just to go to Lebanon and help.
As you saw, this is how Egyptian youth could use their abilities in a right way to spread social justice and help Lebanese. Hope this video encouraged you to do the same. And for me, it definitely encouraged me to work more in volunteering works and make me proud of being capable to do so. Thank you so much. It was Maria Medhat, Global Youth Reporter for Team Harmony Foundation from Egypt.
Thanks, Maria, for a perfect example of youth taking action. And we hope you're inspired to do the same at home.
Because that is what Team Harmony is all about.
That's it for our show. But if you stick around, you'll be able to chat with some of the people you've seen on today's broadcast. So until next time, peace.
Hello everyone, I'm Ellie Barquette. I am your host for tonight's live discussion, and I'm excited to be here with our guests tonight. We have our comedian and host of Fake the Nation, Negin Farsad, and comedian Alonzo Bowden. So thank you both for joining me tonight.
Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Of course. So we have just learned about microaggressions, stereotypes, and discrimination happening in so many parts of the world, but we're all here to make a difference and combat hate in all its forms. So let's get started. Negin, if you remember in our first story, it was about
so you want us to like figure out all of hate in just this like Q&A right here?
Yes. That's
Alonzo,
what
are you ready? Because we have like a big job. In just
Well, you go first.
2 minutes.
You go first, and I'll clean up what you don't cover, and then we'll be done.
For those at home, they are friends. Negin and Alonzo know each other, so this is going to be a great time. So our first question.
Continue your question.
That's okay. Negin, if you remember our first story, it was about microaggressions, these little phrases that people toss into conversations that are offensive. Have you experienced them yourself?
I mean, yeah, I think everyone's experienced a microaggression. Maybe it's race-based or gender-based or whatever, or maybe it's just like people that are just passive-aggressive and annoying. Like, everyone has experienced a microaggression, from like, are you gonna wear that outfit, to to something that's more pointed, like the examples that they gave in that first segment that are more about race and gender, and definitely, I'm married. My husband is Black, and so oftentimes he'll point out, that people come and ask us like if they can help us, but it's not like, if we're in a store or something like that. It's more like they're asking, what are you doing here? And this happens more to him than to me. And so I feel like I see it happen a lot, especially when I'm with him.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. How about you, Alonzo? Have you experienced any microaggressions throughout your career?
Well, Negin hit on it. I mean, being Black in America is just one, you just deal with it. You can't, the funny thing about microaggressions, right? They're small, but you can't react to every one of them, or you would be reacting constantly. Like, all my life, people have been afraid of me. I'm a large Black man, and they're taught to be afraid of us. That image is continually pounded into them that we are dangerous. So, whether it be me walking down the street and somebody crossing the street, or people not getting in the elevator with you, or like Nagin said, when you're in a store, especially if it's any kind of, it doesn't even have to be an upscale store or whatever, but can I help you? When they're really saying, what are you doing here? Can you afford to be here? And it's actually fun for me a lot of times, because it's like, yeah, I can easily afford it. I mean, I had a guy at a store, a security guard, stop me from looking at a watch, an expensive watch, and I was wearing the watch. It was like, yeah, I think I can afford it, seeing as I have one.
Alonzo likes to walk around with his bank statements just to prove to people he belongs.
So but again, if I reacted to every one of those, I would be angry all the time. Being black in America is unique, I think, amongst minorities because of the history of slavery. Because for 400 years we were considered second class and animals and a bunch of other hateful things. So that is always inherent. That's always there. And then it goes the other way, like, wow, you're very articulate. Like, yeah, I am from here. I speak English. Like, why? Like, they're shocked. Like, oh my God, you're black and you speak English? Yeah, my family's been here for hundreds of years. When did you get here? So
Yeah, the articulate thing and the like you speak English so well thing is something that a lot of immigrants is something that I've gotten just because of the name, Nagin Farsad, or they hear that I'm Iranian and they're just confused. And then I think also women get a different type of microaggression, which is almost more in it happens in like shutting them up when they're talking, or just like talking over them. We're really in the habit of like talking over women, and so that's a microaggression I think like probably every woman in the entire globe has experienced at some point. And that's again, like Alonzo was saying, like if you made a case for each one, you'd be doing it all the time. So we all come up with our own weird ways of just like managing it and moving right along.
Yes. Yeah, Kamala Harris in the debate, it was a great moment when she just said, I'm talking. I'm still talking.
Yes.
And that was, women really heard that, because as Nagin said, women get that all the time. And Kamala Harris stood up for herself, and she did it in a way that was like really cool. Like, it was dismissive without being, she wasn't angry or mean, but she got her message across, and there was definitely some swag in the delivery. So that was that was a great moment.
Yes. And the fly was on Mike Pence's head, but it was on her side.
Yes. So what would you say to somebody who is offended by a microaggression? How do you typically handle a situation where you might be offended by one? Alonzo, we'll start with you.
You have to choose your battles. You have to choose your battles. I mean, I honestly, like here in the U.S., we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, right? We're dealing with the police and trying to reform the police department and police treatment of blacks. So when you look at the fact that a black male, particularly a young black male, I joke about it, like I've aged out of the threatening category, But if you're looking at the fact that, and this really hits black mothers, and I've talked to them, when you're worried about your kid getting killed, microaggressions don't matter as much. So again, you have to choose your battles, because we have some real serious problems. Education inequality, economic inequality. So when you look at those things, the microaggressions matter and they add up, but unfortunately, we're still, as I said before, we're still fighting much bigger battles that our parents fought and our grandparents fought, and they've been renewed. Racism has, under the Trump administration, racism was emboldened, and they came out and they were told that they're not wrong, and they pretended they were the victims. They pretended they were the victims. So if you point out racism, then they yell, "Why you make everything about race?" So, which allowed them to, propagate their messages, continue with that racism and ignorance and hate. So when it comes to microaggressions, I would say you have to choose your battles. You can't fight every single one.
Thank you. Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you gotta like live your life, right? So I think Alonso's right. You should absolutely pick your battles. And I think you also have to learn to sort of I when I was early on, and Alonzo, you probably relate to this. Like in a writer's room, it's really loud. You're pitching a lot of jokes, and this is a lot of writers' rooms for television shows are male oriented. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are now, but when I started out, I was consistently the only woman in the room, and so I just had to literally deepen my voice, strengthen my resolve, and make sure that I couldn't be cut off. And it's just a skill that I had to develop, unfortunately, because everyone's just like knee jerk reaction would be to cut me off. And so I think I basically was taking a page out of like the male playbook, I guess. And it's worked for me, that strategy, in a lot of professional settings.
And the opposite also works. My brother's a corporate guy. He's been corporate all his life. And I remember a long time ago he said, if you're tall and you have a deep voice, people tend to do what you say.
So no one will ever listen to me.
He would walk into the conference room and just start telling people what to do. And the next thing you know, he's managing the project just because they assumed that he was in charge because he just had a bearing about him just because of his physical height. We're 6'3" and you have a deep voice, and they were like, "Oh, well, he must be the guy in charge."
What would you say to someone who's 5 foot tall and sounds like a 4-year-old?
You could still be in charge. Why not? Hey, listen. Kevin Hart. How big is Kevin Hart on stage? Honestly, Kevin is his physical presence isn't huge, but his personality is, and his confidence is, et cetera, et cetera. And it becomes the physical joke when he's standing next to The Rock or he's standing next to Shaq, right?
Yep.
But he commands as much of an audience because it's in him to command that audience. So yeah, confidence. Just do it. Just speak up. And believe me, there are big people who, inside of me is a very small guy. Inside, I have another friend who he's like that, and he did a whole thing about it. But he's like 6'7" athletic, and he said, but inside he's still the 12-year-old nerd with the retainer and the this and the that. That's what's going on in his head. So yeah, the a lot of times the external is just not who the person is.
And yeah, everyone's confidence is totally made up. You know what I mean? No, walking into a situation and acting like you run it is like completely made up. No one feels that way to start out with, So it's all about sort of like just building the practice of acting confident until you feel confident.
So would you say with confidence and a sense of humor that people with confidence and a sense of humor have an advantage in difficult situations?
I think so. I mean, I think humor is disarming, if you're in a situation with people whenever I experienced any kind of people yelling at me, like, go back to your own country and all of that stuff that I mentioned in that segment, those kinds of people would generally be disarmed if I would be like, hey, like, you want to have a chat though? I think people just don't expect that kind of reaction. People always expect an escalation, there's anger, but what if you don't respond that way? What if you respond with a smile and an invitation, you know what I mean? Assuming everyone's safe. And again, I think confidence just makes other people feel more comfortable that you know what you're doing and saying. You know what I mean? It just breeds comfort in everybody if you kind of approach a situation with confidence. And then humor just makes it more fun and unexpected. So, and forget humor, just like delightfulness, which is something everybody knows how to do. If you don't know how to do comedy, that's fine, but you definitely know how to do delightfulness. And I think that's something that is a tool, like such a useful tool in the toolkit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, humor, it definitely disarms people. and it diffuses situations, it tense situations, and so on. It's happened. I've used it a ton. I am not what people would stereotypically see as a stand-up comic. And when I go on stage, and then after the first laugh, I mean, not so much now because I've been doing it so long, but in the beginning, they would exhale. They'd be like, "Oh, okay, this guy isn't what we saw." Confidence also comes from actually knowing what you're talking about. That is another thing. Do the homework before you get there, so that you can answer the questions and be ready. What Nagin was talking about confidence being learned. Unfortunately, we have a lot of con artists, right? We have a lot of used car salesmen, or whatever category. Trust me, I'm keeping the language clean on this, but you know what I'm talking about.
Get a job.
You look at our government. Look at our government all the time. Ted Cruz is ridiculously confident with nothing behind it. Nothing behind it. Just there's a saying we have. He's often wrong, but never in doubt. That you don't want to be that, because people see through it. So confidence is also built from expertise.
Ted Cruz may not have a lot of substance behind what he's doing, but he certainly has a lot of frequent flyer miles to Mexico. So he's got that going for him.
Absolutely. So in terms of living in a world with racism, what do you wish you could tell your younger self? Nagin, we would start with you.
Oh my God. That's such a good question. I would tell my younger self not to feel nervous or scared about pointing out stuff that's wrong. And that half of the time, and more than half of the time, it's not that people are just fundamentally racist. It's that they don't know, right? It's like bred out of ignorance, and that you can be someone who points it out to them, and you can't assume that they're just there to be bigoted or mean or out to get you. It's and yeah, I would say to my younger self, don't be afraid to speak up. It's okay, and you may actually change a mind or get someone like this much closer to their mind being changed. Maybe they need to go this distance and that's forever, but you're gonna be getting them closer and closer little by little. And also, share the reality. I used to act like I wasn't Iranian and Muslim. I used to water that down and hide aspects of myself because I was embarrassed, or I just wanted to fit in. No, you are just far more interesting at cocktail parties if you talk about, the beef tongue sandwich you ate at lunch. You know what I mean? Let people know. This is the stuff we eat. These are the holidays we celebrate. Muslims, we're super fun. You can make the stereotype and you can change the stereotype. And so, let yourself be an ambassador, because you're a great one.
Wonderful. Thank you. Alonzo, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I have to say, my mother told me something when I was young that really made a difference, and it was great advice. She said, remember, they're scared of you. And that was good advice, because it's something that you don't think about. You don't think of yourself as a scary or intimidating presence. When people bring it up to me, I'm like, look, we're not Vikings. I'm not walking in with an axe just killing people, raping and pillaging. It doesn't work like that anymore, So that was good advice I was given. I agree with what Nagin said. Embrace who you are. Yeah, embrace who you are. There have been a lot of times where I wish I had. I didn't have that. I don't have a natural self-confidence. So yeah, embrace who you are, and you're good enough. And that's not just with race, that's with everything, right? That's dealing with, your physical being. Like our society's really, stuck on how much do you weigh, or this or that, any of those things, right? Like Nagin said, any of the things that make you different, although we're told to like push them down and try to homogenize, they're actually what makes you interesting, So embrace those things, and you find it. You find the people who are comfortable being different rise to the surface. You see that over and over. People, so embrace who you are, your individuality and your personality.
Thank you. I'm sure after how long you guys have been in the industry, I'm sure that it hasn't always been easy. So was there ever a point of time that you wanted to quit, and why didn't you? Alonzo, we'll go back to you.
No, never. I couldn't even imagine not doing this. I think when you're a comic, it's just ingrained in you. Like, I never think of it as a job. It's just who I am. Used to say all the time, my job is going to the airport, catching planes, blah, 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 all of that. The stage is home. No, I never even thought of giving it up. I can't imagine not doing this. No. And really quick, recently I learned the story of Charlie Case, who was a black man born to a white mother and a black father in 1858, who started out as a lawyer, failed, went to traveling salesman, failed, but could tell great stories, went to vaudeville, had a breakdown, couldn't do vaudeville anymore because he had to do it in blackface and he had to wear these costumes and this and that. And he just stood on stage and talked, and he made people laugh. And he is credited as having started stand-up comedy, being the first stand-up. So as a black man, that story really hit me like, wow, there's another one we did, So we got that, and we got jazz. No, this industry can't make me quit, nor can it can't make anyone who truly believes and has a talent and a gift quit.
Good. We don't want you going anywhere. How about you, Nagin?
Oh my God. I mean, it is like rather brutal. There's so much rejection in this field, especially if, you add acting and all of that stuff to it. It is incredibly brutal, but then I think, I don't know, you kind of grow to, like, you sort of share a bunk bed with rejection in a way that just at the end just feels sort of normal. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it doesn't really occur to me much to quit. Because it's like, also like, the alternatives for me at this point are very undesirable. But I mean, I get, I could go into taxidermy. But even that feels kind of competitive. Like, could I break in like a career switch, mid career change into taxidermy? I don't know. So I don't know. I've thought about it, but like, I just don't. It's just, the thing is that you go back on stage and you get a laugh, and then you're like, well, it's fantastic, and then it just keeps, it's like a drug, and then it just keeps pulling you back in. So the thoughts don't last for long if I have them.
Well, we're glad.
If the word no is going to stop you in this business, you won't last 2 years. You just won't. I mean, if you get in this business for the money, you won't you have to love it. Any kind of creative endeavor, you have to love, because unless you're born into it, it's hard, and you're going to hear no a ton. I mean, if you're born into it, then you have certain connections, and you'll get certain breaks, and you'll also learn much more about it, from a young age, from birth. But yeah, the word no in showbiz, and the other thing I've learned is you never know why they said no. You never know why, and it may have nothing to do with you. And to sit back and examine, is it because of your race? There are times when it is, and it is, but you just got to roll with that, because that's just the way it is. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's what we're here for today, to help change that. So is there anything else you would like to say to the world?
Talk to your neighbors. That's where the good stuff is. So many of our problems will be solved if you talk to your neighbors in a fun way. Yeah.
Yeah, we're more alike than different. And what Nagin said, talking to your neighbors is how you find out. Again, I had the experience. I joke about it. I was bused to white schools before it was an issue, so they didn't have a chance to not bus me. And growing up, going to school with white kids was I didn't even realize how great that was, just because it takes away the unknown of their culture and what I went to school with white kids and Jewish kids, and they went to school with black kids, and we all you're just kids, right? It's hard to be a racist at 5 years old, at 6 years old, you because you're like, well, this kid's good at basketball, or this kid's good at math, or whatever it is, right? So you just become friends with other kids, and then as you get older is when you start separating. So yeah, like Nagin said, talk to your neighbor, listen to them. That's even more. Eat their food. Eat their food. That one of the great things about growing up in New York, and we joked about this, you know how hard it is to be racist in New York? Like, just to make it down one block, the number of names you would have to come up with to insult every person you saw.
You'd have too much to do.
It's too busy. But you look at the food, what kind of food, every kind of food in the world is in a 2 block span, and you're like, this is delicious, I don't know anything about the Middle East, but I like this hummus, or the shawarma. Whoa, you get hit with shawarma, you gotta like, hey, we gotta let them in, because have you had the chicken shawarma? Yeah, we gotta let them in. I'm sorry, we'll get to the religions later. They brought chicken shawarma, they're good with me, and so on. I mean, it's like Dave Chappelle famously did a joke about liking fried chicken, and it was like, I thought I liked fried chicken because it was delicious. I didn't know I was genetically predisposed to liking chicken. Like, who doesn't like fried chicken? Fried chicken is good, So, yeah, they open up, take a chance on another culture. It's amazing what you find.
Yes. So talk to your neighbors and eat fried chicken. Enjoy your night. Thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you for those of you who joined at home. Please remember to follow us on our Instagram and Facebook account at Team Harmony 2020. You can also follow Alonzo and Nagin tagged in our last post on our page. Until next time. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
Day.
You too.